Hi, I'm going to walk you through Zing Data, a modern analytics platform that lets you ask questions from your data, regardless of whether you're at a computer or on iOS or Android. And you don't need to have pre-created any dashboards, you don't need to know SQL. Zing makes it visual with our Swift Query Builder, or you can use natural language if you'd like, harnessing the power of LLMs like OpenAI and Google Palm V2. Or, of course, you can use SQL to craft any question that you'd like. On top of that, all the data in Zing can be pulled in real time from your underlying sources of truth, which means that instead of waiting for dashboards to get updated or emailed to you, everything is up to date. And in fact, you can even set up Zing to notify you in real time whenever something changes. Let me show you how this works. We go to zingdata.com and we log in. In this case, we already have an account, but if not, we could create one. From here, we're going to add a data source. Now, Zing supports BigQuery, Snowflake, Databricks, and other major data warehouses, but it also supports just adding something like an Excel file or CSV. So we'll do that right now. Our data source is an Excel file, and we select the file we want to upload. In this case, I'm going to upload some data, an Excel file, about historical energy production of different types, like oil and gas by year. From there, I'm going to go start querying this. I just hit start querying. Of course, if I'd like, I have other options to control who I invite, what level of permissions they have, if I want to allow invites outside my organization, and to have multiple data sources living side by side. For now, though, let's jump into querying. This is the core Zing app, available on mobile as well as web. Let's look at how we ask a question. So we have dashboards, questions, and tables. And if I want to query that data source we just created, I can go to sources and see that we just uploaded this energy production table. I click onto it and I see all the fields that exist. I'm going to go say that I'd like to look by year at different types of energy production. Let's say I'd like to compare wind with solar, and maybe with gas and oil and coal. Now, this looks a little busy, so what I'm going to do is actually turn this into a stacked bar chart just by tapping in the top right. Great. So I see kind of my series over time, but this is a lot of years, and I really want to focus on kind of the growth over the last 10 years in different data sources. So I'm going to go to year and drag it as a filter and say that I just want to look at the years after, let's say, 2000. Save that as a filter. Great. And you'll notice Zing updates it in just seconds. If I'd like, I could do something like create a calculated field using the full power of SQL to, let's say, look at the sum of renewable versus non-renewable sources over time and make that a percentage. And I could even overlay that as a combination chart. I can also do things like add dimensional splits just by dragging a field down to this dimension area. So I run this question, and now I'm going to format it a little bit. Perhaps I'd like my renewable sources to be blue or something like that. So we'll make wind blue, we'll make solar maybe a different shade of blue. And then we'll make gas red, oil red, and coal also red. Once I've created this question, I can go tag colleagues or save it. So I'll save this as energy production since 2000 by type. And I may wish to look specifically at, let's say, some of the series, so I can just tap on the legend to turn them on or off, And I might tag to one of my colleagues that it looks like solar here is growing pretty quickly. So I just use an @ mention and say, hey, @Maria, solar is growing fast. Let's create a marketing campaign for solar installers. And my colleague will now get a push notification if they have the Zing app installed. Otherwise, they'll get an email so that they can jump into this. I can decide to share this with them by typing in their email address or sharing it to other people in my organization as a viewer or editor. I could also share this externally if my administrator has allowed it by generating a public link. I just hit generate public link. And now this will be available to anybody who I send this link to. I can disable it just as easily. And as an administrator, you can control if this option for public link sharing is going to be available at all to your users. Great. So now we've got this question set up. And if one of my colleagues wants to build on it, they're not limited to just looking at what I created. They can tap these 3 dots and they can make a copy and say perhaps that they want to look at how big of an impact nuclear is as well. So they just drag it there and see, okay, that it doesn't change the overall result that much. It's relatively small in comparison. And so they could go back and say, yeah, it makes sense to focus on, let's say, the solar segment. So now we've just created a question. Now we're going to query in a different way, using natural language. This uses some of the latest LLMs from OpenAI and Google to translate my question into a graph. Let's look at how this works. In the search bar at the top, I'm just going to say, which products are out of stock? And I'm going to choose the data source that I want to query on. In this case, this Northwind database. Zing analyzes that question, generates the SQL, and shows us the products that have 0 units of stock. I could also go back and say, which products have less than 10 units in stock? And in just a second or two, that query gets updated, as you can see here. If I wanted, I could build other information on top of this. For instance, let's say I want to show the actual number of units in stock. Great. I rerun this query, and here's my result. Now I'm going to save this. And I'll call it products low or out of stock. And I'm going to tag my colleague so that she can go reorder them. Great. One other thing I might want to do is look at how people are engaging with my website or how my manufacturing line is doing over time. So I'm going to go look at some time series data. In this case, information about events. I'm going to go look at the number of events over time. And so I will put time on the x-axis. And I'll say I only care about really the last relative 30 days. And then I'm going to say that I want to see the number of events. So we'll do a count of that. And you'll notice when I drag event ID to the y-axis, it gives me these options. I can have sum, count, count distinct, and so on. In this case, I'm going to do a count. And instead of month, I actually want this to be by day. So I'll update that. And one other thing I may want to do is get this count of events by type. So I'm going to add that event type as a dimensional split. And instead of a line chart, I'm going to go to a stacked bar chart. This looks a little busy, and really the thing I'm most interested in tracking is kind of total number of events, how active my users are. So maybe I'm going to take out event type, and instead of looking at the last 30 days at a daily frequency, I'm actually only going to look at the last 1 day. And I'm going to say that I'd like to look at this by minute instead of hour or day. Great, so I'm going to run this query, make it a line chart. And once I've run this, and of course if I'd like, I can go back and I can format the x-axis in any way I'd like. So I can say that I want it to show, with this specific time or date format. So now I've got this time series of events by minute. And what I'm going to do is tap these 3 dots and create a new alert. And this allows me to define, let's say, a threshold as a percentage change, an increase, a drop, or a specific number. So I'm going to use a specific number and say, hey, I'd like to be notified whenever there's at least 15 events in a given minute, because it seems that that would be a kind of high water mark for number of actions in a given minute. And I'd like that check to happen every minute or every hour or every day. This could be used to notify you that something is low on stock. This could be used to notify you that perhaps part of your manufacturing facility isn't working. This could be notifying you that a project is running longer than it's supposed to and that you might need to take action. So we're going to say we want to be alerted by email. If I had created this alert on my phone, I would get a push notification. Great. And of course, if anybody asks me for the raw data, I can share this question with them and they can make a copy and build on top of it. I could also save this graph down to my computer or my photo gallery if I'm on my phone. And I can also save any of this data down as a CSV if someone wants the underlying data. Great. So I'm going to show you one more thing, which is actually going to be how we put all this together as a dashboard. I just hit plus here for dashboards. And I can drag user events by minute. I can drag products that are low or out of stock. And let's say energy production since 2000. And we'll call this demo dash. And you'll notice that each of these components is resizable, so I can make it look exactly how I'd like it to. Let's say I want to make this full width. Now we're going to hop over to our mobile device and see how easy it is not just to view what we've created here, but build on it and ask questions from scratch there. Let's take a look. Now we're on our mobile phone. We're going to open the Zing Data app available on iOS and Android. And immediately we see the dashboard that we just created on web. We could add to that dashboard or modify it. So let's say we have a set of stores and we want to add some location information and actually get a map of which stores are performing best. Well, we're going to quickly add a data source by tapping on the Sources tab, and then we're going to hit Add. We're going to choose a Google Sheet that has some location information. So we just go down to Google Sheets, and we're going to authenticate into our existing Google Sheets account. If we wanted, we could also drop in a Google Sheet URL. You can choose to have a live connection where your data will always be updated based on the latest sheet values, or you can pull from a static snapshot. In this case, we're going to specify that we'd like a live connection. So we'll turn that on and connect to our Google Sheet. In this case, there's only one tab with store locations, but if there were multiple tabs, Zing would be able to pull those in as well. We then hit save, and Zing is now connected to this data source. From here, we're going to scroll down to location example, we're going to click on Store Locations to start querying. Now, we select Map as the visualization type and drag this latitude field to that latitude drop zone. You'll notice Zing already figures out there's a matching column for longitude and adds that to the longitude field. We'd like the name of each store to appear as a label, and we want the sales of each store to be the size that it appears on the map. We also might want some other information, like the number of complaints for each location as a label, the number of to-go orders at each location, and the staffing level of each location. We're also going to say we only want to see stuff that's close to where we are. So we're going to add a location filter and give Zing permission to use our location when we have the app open. I'm going to say I only want locations that are within 10 miles of my current location. Alternatively, I could also choose a specific location, like San Francisco or Boston or a specific street address. I'll go back to my current location though, and look at things that are within 10 miles. I see grouped results if there's multiple locations that are very close to each other. And so I could see these larger circles indicate that there's more sales in that area, and I might want to click into them. So I can see here, Embarcadero Oysters had $40,000 in sales. Good Yeast Bakery had only $14,000 of sales. I could then save this question, and I'll call it Store Sales. And I can make it available to my colleagues. One other thing I can do is create a new dashboard or add to the one that was already created. And I can even do that from my phone. So I'm just going to drag Store Sales to this dashboard that we'd created. And sure enough, I see all this new query information available on this dashboard that I made. We've walked through how Zing lets you easily create and ask questions from mobile or web. Let's say I'd like to go look at my support team. I simply drag fields on my phone. Let's say hours worked. I would like summed on my y-axis, and I'd like to see that by topic, which I'm going to put on the x-axis. I'd also like to cut that by platform. I just drag platform to the dimension split. And in a couple seconds, I've asked a question from scratch. I could then save this down to my phone's photo gallery to embed it in a presentation, or go tag one of my colleagues to have them take action. You can try this out at zingdata.com, and our team is happy to help you get up and running. Thanks.